Hi, it's Dot, and today I'm making a low-carb, 3-cheese broccoli au gratin, a perfect dish for Thanksgiving. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add cream, heavy cream I'm using. You can also use heavy whipping cream. They're both fine. I'm adding this to my pan, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start heating this up. I'm going to heat it on a low temperature, and what I want this to do is I want it to start simmering before I start adding in the other ingredients. And basically what I'm doing, this is the cheese sauce that's going to go on top of the broccoli. All right, so you can see here it's starting to bubble, so I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit more. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to add part of my cheese. And for this one, you can use cream cheese. I'm using mascarpone, which is an Italian cream cheese, so it's a little bit mild, not as tangy, it's a little sweeter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt the mascarpone in the cream. And this is one of the ways I'm thickening it besides using reduction with the heat. All right, as you can see, the cheese is melted in the cream. I'm letting it come to a simmer again, but I'm going to go ahead and just add in my seasoning. So I'm using a little bit of kosher salt, a pinch of black pepper, and then I'm also going to use 1 clove of garlic that I've already minced. That's just going to go right in. And last but not least, just to add a little bit of flavor, and this is because of the second cheese I'm going to be using, is just a little bit of smoked paprika. And you can see it bubbling. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stir all the seasoning in, and I'm going to stir this for a bit until everything is well combined before I add in my second cheese. So I'm still simmering the cheese, as you can see, and I haven't added in my second one yet. And what I'm doing is I'm doing this so that until the sauce here starts thickening up a little bit more. But you can see it's at a nice simmer, and you really just want to stir often. You don't have to just constantly stir it, but you do want to stir it often because you don't want it to burn. The sauce is thickened to the point that I want it, so I'm going to go ahead and add in. I'm doing a Gouda cheese, a smoked Gouda, I should say, adding in about 4 ounces of it. Now, if you want, like I said, I used the mascarpone for the first cheese, but if you want to use cream cheese, that's perfectly fine. If you want to use a cheddar or a Swiss cheese instead of the smoked Gouda, that is completely up to you. All I'm doing now is I'm stirring it constantly because I want the Gouda to incorporate smoothly into it. And basically the sauce won't be ready until the cheese is completely melted. Okay, my cheese sauce is all set. I'm ready to go. I'm using, because we're taking this to a friend's house, so I'm using one of those little papery casserole dishes, but that's fine. I went ahead and I used ghee, and I just used about a tablespoon of it, and I greased basically the pan itself around the sides and the bottoms, just so nothing sticks. You can use butter if you want instead of ghee, or you can just use a little spray and spray it. I've already gone ahead and layered the broccoli in one level, and what I did, I just used frozen florets, broccoli florets, and it's about 6 cups is all I'm using, so it'll be fine. It'll serve 6 people easily. Keep in mind for Thanksgiving, you can serve possibly a little bit more depending on whether or not you take little bits, depending on how many side dishes you essentially have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add the cheese. Now you certainly can take the broccoli, put it in a mixing bowl, and just basically pour the cheese on top of it and then let it sort of get all over the place. I just like pouring it on top, and I'll spread it around that way instead. But you can do it either way, but I'm not making if I was making a much bigger dish, I probably would go ahead and just use the mixing bowl. But when it's Thanksgiving time, sometimes you just don't need that many dishes you need to be worried about. So I'm just going to take this and spread it around so we cover all the broccoli. And again, I've got the broccoli in a single layer, so all the broccoli is going to get cheese. All right, I got my cheese spread all over my broccoli, and then the last thing I'm going to do, you certainly could use an almond flour or hazelnut flour or coconut flour as a breading, as a breadcrumb, like a traditional au gratin. I'm actually going to be topping it with sliced tomatoes. So I'm just going to put my tomatoes here, and I'm just going to go across. And they're pretty thinly sliced, so it's not terribly big slices. The next thing I'm going to do is add my third cheese, which is going to be a shredded Parmesan cheese. So it's a shredded Parmesan, and I'm just going to go ahead, and it's about a 1/4 cup of Parmesan that I'm using, all over my tomatoes in the dish. So now it's ready to go in the oven. It's going to bake for about 30 to 40 minutes. It's going to come out, and it's going to be absolutely tasty. All right, my casserole is out of the oven. It smells absolutely wonderful. I will say this, since I'm using this this paper casserole dish, I couldn't do what I wanted to do, which is at the end when you have either a ceramic dish or metal pan, I would have actually put it on broiler for just a few minutes to really brown the tomatoes, but that's okay. I don't have to do that. It's still going to taste great. But again, it just adds a little bit of color to your dish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut it and then just take out a little piece and have a taste. The first piece is always the hardest one to get. So as you can see, it is piping hot. I probably would let it cool for a few minutes before actually cutting it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bite of this. It's really nice. You can still taste the broccoli. I didn't overdo the cheese. Sometimes a lot of casserole dishes, you can have way too much cheese sauce. I have just the right amount. It tastes absolutely wonderful. It's not very liquidy, which is another thing I want to make sure of about the casserole. It can be a little bit too liquid since you're using broccoli and tomatoes. They leach a lot of water, but this just tastes absolutely wonderful. And again, if you want to use cheddar cheese and cream cheese together, absolutely go right ahead and do that. You don't have to use the two cheese that I use, but definitely use the Parmesan on top. It gives you a nice little crunch. So with that, if you are new to the channel, hit like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I hope you give this a try for Thanksgiving. There's under 5 carbs in this dish, so it's a wonderful dish to have on Thanksgiving which is traditionally carb heavy. So with that, I'll see you next time.